Live, let's go. Glory to God. Before we start, let's pray. This is definitely a day we need to pray before we start reading. Lord, thank you so much for your goodness. I've been praying to you before this live stream. I just pray again that you will help me, guide me, as the Olivet Discourse is very hard to truly understand and just pray that you will help me and guide me. Holy Spirit, may you speak more than myself as we go through this. May you stop me if I'm wrong. Please help me and guide me today as we read through this. Amen. All right, so today we're going to read Matthew 24. We're going to read parts of the Olivet Discourse. Man, I'm not gonna lie, this is very hard to really conceptualize for me. If conceptualize is the right word. It's one of those texts that's not I don't know, it's not super easy to just I don't know, I don't think it's cut clear what it means, the Olivet Discourse. I think one thing is for sure. I think a lot of it is definitely about Jerusalem and the fall of Jerusalem. That's for sure. So we're going to talk about what we can see for sure. I think, and then we're going to talk about other things that can mean other things and stuff. But anyways, let's jump into the word. We're going to read Matthew 24, 1 through 35, I believe today. 35 or 36. I think it's 35. Anyways, okay. Let's start it. So it says, Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." All right, so this is about, I really believe this is about the temple destruction that was in 70 AD. And so we're gonna read today about, the temple destruction and the fall of Jerusalem. And we see even in Matthew 23 how Jesus basically says, 37, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it." But yeah, here and now, we're going to read about the destruction of Jerusalem here. And destruction of Jerusalem and the fall of the temple. I think it's so important this is also one of the things that makes it kind of complicated sometimes to read this. We need to understand, reading this passage here, we need to remember, the Bible is not written to us, is written, but we could argue it's written for us. Which makes a lot of this complicated. But anyways, we're going to read Matthew 24, 3 through 14. It says, "As he sat on the Mount of Olives, As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the age?'" And I think those two things are kind of key, or very understanding their question can help us understand the whole passage as well. I think maybe I don't know. "And Jesus answered them, 'See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray.'" And again, remember, it's so important to remember here. I think it's so important to remember, Jesus is not necessarily saying just this to us today. He's saying this to the disciples asking him, right? That doesn't mean he cannot talk about the future in any of these things. He really might be talking about the future in some of this as well. He really might, but he's talking to the disciples as well right now. So I think that's important context. He might be talking about the future in some sense, but he's talking to the disciples specifically right now. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, for the end is not yet. For nations will rise excuse me. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as the testimony to all nations, and the end will come. Okay, so first of all, they're asking, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? One way to understand this is that they ask 2 or 3 things. When will the temple be destroyed? And what's the sign of your coming? Or what's the sign of the end of the age? In their minds, that might have felt like one event, but Jesus might be explaining that it's 2 separate events. And so that's what he's might be explaining in Matthew 24 here. Verses 4 to 14, where Jesus answers them, Jesus is talking about true and false signs pointing towards Jerusalem's destruction. So all of these things, I think that points towards Jerusalem destruction. I think he's talking about Jerusalem's destruction right here. Okay, Matthew 24, 15 through 28. And I'm going to be totally honest. I don't feel like I know the Olivet Discourse like as well enough to just like say for certain this is what it means, this is what it means, blah blah. I want to be honest, like I might be wrong about things today, maybe not, I don't know, but I don't want to be I think this is a very hard text, honestly, so this, I'm not going to go in the deepest study, deep diving, basically. I'm not going to go super deep diving today in absolutely everything here. So just be aware of that. Because I don't have a very clear view on everything. And I don't want to just take a view of like, yeah. Again, we need to remember Jesus is talking to the disciples here. And later on, we will see Jesus say, he does says, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place, right? He does say that. All right, so Matthew 15 Matthew 24, 15 through 28. I'm going to read that. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. And we're going to talk more about that. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go. If they say, look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be this coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there will be vultures. There the vultures will gather. All right, so, man, this passage, I believe, is talking about, this passage is talking about the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of Jerusalem. The destruction of Jerusalem was absolutely horrible. It was vile. It was violent, horrible, a horrible destruction. Millions died. So in verse 15, when Daniel says here, so when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, Matthew says this, spoken about the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place. This abomination that causes desolation is a sign that Jerusalem is right on the verge of being destroyed. And then Jesus says, of that time period, as we see 21, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now. No, and never will be. And this is still about the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple in the middle of it. Again, it was horrible. So when Matthew is talking about the abomination, like here, desolation, the abomination that causes desolation, in Daniel's prophecy, he is likely referring to several texts. Matthew's referring to several texts in Matthew here. In Daniel's. So first text is Daniel 8:13, which is, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the ones who spoke, for how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering? There's transgression that makes desolate, and the grieving over the sanctuary and host to be trampled underfoot. So that's the first one. Second one, 9:27 says, and he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate, until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. And then we have Daniel 11. Let's just go here and then one more time. 11:31. It says, forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. And then 12:11 is the last one here I have as examples. And it says, we're kind of going through these kind of quickly now, but and from that time that regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So going back here, so centuries before Christ coming, Daniel foretold a time when a foreign ruler would come into the temple and profane it. And actually most Jewish people linked that and believed that would be linking to something that happened around 168 before Christ, when a ruler named Antiochus Epiphanes or something like that, however you say that, came into the temple and erected a pagan altar and even sacrificed pigs on it, and by defiling the house of God, right? It's absolutely horrible things. But Jesus seems to say that event was just a foreshadow of what was to come when Jerusalem is destroyed. So around 70 AD, Roman armies began surrounding the city of Jerusalem to overtake it, and when they did so, the Roman army destroyed the temple and made sacrifices to false gods, declaring Titus the Roman emperor to be supreme. Josephus, he was a Jewish historian. He described how horrible this time was for Jewish men and women. He described the savagery, slaughter, disease, and famine that marked the Jewish people during those years. Parents, it was horrendous. It was horrible. Parents resorted to cannibalism and ate their own children. And many Jews were taken into horrible slavery. The death toll of these events was in the millions. So I believe these words here, Jesus says in verse 15 here, and 16, so when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, right? Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now. No, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, there is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. And again, the context of this is the destruction of Jerusalem, right? This is the destruction of Jerusalem. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. So that's what Jesus is describing right now. He's prophesying this fall of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem, is going to be absolutely horrible. It's going to be horrendous. So that's what he's referring to. He's talking about right here, right? Again, we tied back to when Jesus says, you see all these things, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will be not left there one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Talking about the temple. He's talking about the temple right here, right? The fall of Jerusalem leads to the fall of the temple. The destruction of Jerusalem falls to the destruction of the temple. So, at that time, don't believe people when they say false Christ and false prophets and whatnot, that Christ is there, don't believe it. There's a lot of false prophets. Actually, in fact, I didn't plan on mentioning this, but in the Didache, I believe that there are mentions about that there are a lot of false prophets and stuff like that, especially back then. It talks about that. All right, so verses 39 through 31, and I'm not gonna lie, this is one of those passages that gives me the most headache, because I don't know exactly how to read this. I think it's very hard for me to read this tying it with 34, where it says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away." Because I think this is very clear. Jesus, at least talking about, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." I think it's very clear that Jesus talks about the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the destruction of the temple. Right? It's very clear that he talks about that. That during this generation, the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem will happen, right? But how do we read as this 29 through 31? That's a big question in my mind, you know. Let's read it and we'll talk about it. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, and again, I want to say, I'm sorry I don't have a clear-cut answer for that right now. Sometimes that's just better to leave it open, because I don't want to lead people astray. I don't want to say this is the truth or whatever. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. I'm gonna be totally honest. Like, please let me know in the comments down below if you have a thought of how you read this passage. Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." All these things take place, right? Is he talking about in general just these things? Or is this also a part of the destruction of Jerusalem? Now, I know you might think that that's kind of crazy and wild to think that this is not just clearly about Christ coming back. You know, but he says immediately after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Immediately. And again, the tribulation here seems like to mean, I believe the tribulation seems to be Jerusalem. Follow the destruction of that, and the Christians struggling and everything, right? So immediately after that, the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the signs of the Son of Man, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And again, Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things takes place. So, again, this could be seen as Old Testament language of kind of like some sort of, I don't know if the right word would be hyperbolism or whatever it's called, hyperbolism, like basically, well, at least, you know, again, understanding how horrible, shalom, Ronin. Ronin, I actually am curious. How would you read Matthew 24, 29, 31? I'm very curious how you would read that. The Olivet Discourse, how would you read that? So we're talking about the Olivet discourses today, where I believe that a lot of the Olivet discourse is definitely talking about the fall, the destruction of Jerusalem, the fall of the temple, destruction of the temple. Yeah, let me know. How would you read that? I'm very curious to know, especially 29 through 31. Let me know. Please let me know. But yeah, so I think a lot of this is also can be tied to Old Testament language as well. But yeah, as I said, I think this is some of the text where it's very hard to really read and gather and to truly. It's not cut clear. It's not like a lot of it is more complicated than I think a lot of. It's not as easy as everything, but it also might be a dual kind of like a both and. So that's also one way to view it, is to view it. This is still talking about kind of the basically one of the views would be where it says that they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. This is judgment. Some would view this as judgment to Jerusalem, for example, and everything, I believe. But yeah, so that's why I don't want to speak too much upon this passage, because I'm not sure. I hope to talk more about these things in the future as well. But as we read through Matthew, this is very complicated, and more complicated than one would think. I don't think it's cut clear. I don't know. But I'm very, very curious, Ronan, to hear your opinion about it. If you don't mind letting me know. If you have one. If you don't, that's totally fine as well. But yeah, the lessons of the fig tree as well says, from the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branches becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. All right, so to me, OT seems like an immediate fulfillment and a future symbolically. The sun is the priesthood, the moon is the kingship, and the stars are Abraham's descendants from a Jewish perspective. Yes. So yeah, to me, the sun will be darkened. So the priesthood will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. Exactly. Amen. I'm so glad I have you in chat, Ronan. The moon is kingship. The moon will not give its light. The kingship will not give its light, and the stars will fall from his. I'm glad I have you in chat, Ronan. No, that's great. And the stars, Abraham's descendants. The stars, Abraham's descendants will fall from heaven, and powers of heaven will be shaken. Yes. So I think, and again, this is one of my where I feel like we probably would understand this verse in Revelation so much better if we know the Old Testament language, the Jewish language, seeing these things from a Jewish perspective. I actually really agree with you. And hearing, I don't know if you know who Gavin Ortlund is, Ronan, but he also mentioned, just hearing a little bit about his views on end times and everything. He just says, reading Revelation, reading these things about the end times is, we need to understand the Old Testament language about a lot of these things. A generation could also be offspring. This wicked generation seems to reference the Pharisees throughout the gospel. So Yeshua could be saying that the wicked seed of serpents won't pass until the end. Seed of serpents versus seeds of women. Yeah, that is great. Yeah, maybe. It might be. It might be, but I do think I actually do hold to that this generation, seeing Jesus saying multiple times, like just this generation, and I kind of hold to that being. I do think that does mean this generation, literally, because of the fall of the. I think it leads, like, all of this is. I do believe this is talking about the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, and it would make sense saying that this generation as well. But it's a possible interpretation of it as well, for sure. But yeah, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting nonetheless. But yeah. But concerning the day, and then Jesus says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father only. And that we will be reading about tomorrow, part 2 of the Olivet Discourse. Yes. Very interesting. The Olivet Discourse is very interesting. I wish I could go way deeper. In the generation in Greek is, in this instance, can also mean race. Interesting. Like a race of beings. That is very interesting. Yeah, I don't know the word, but that would be very interesting. To that too, this race will not pass away. Yeah, well, I would kind of hold to, I don't know, I kind of see it as this generation, as in these people. But did you send me an email? I did. Yeah, did you receive it? I did send you an email. Let me see here. Let me make sure that it is correct. So yeah, I did send it to Ronin Torah 613 at gmail.com. Let me know if you received it or not. Let me write it back to you to show you how I wrote it, to see if it's correct. Ronin. Without the spaces. I didn't have spaces in it, of course, but just, yeah, remove the spaces, and then this is how I wrote it, basically. So let me know if this is the right one or not. That's the one I sent it to. Yeah. Yeah. If you can send me to in Shem Tov Matthew, that would be interesting. Dude, I got it. It was in my spam. Okay, perfect. The sweet. That's great. I mean, it's great that you got it, at least. Yeah, send that to me. I'll take a look at it. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you for sending me that. Again, like, I think it's just, again, like the first Christians were Jews, very Jewish. So I think Matthew wrote in a very Jewish language. So I think it would be very helpful for me to read it in that as well. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll take a look at that. I'll take a look at that and see what that says at least. Very helpful. That is great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. With that, I think that is the reading for today anyways. That is Matthew, the first part of the Olivet Discourse, the complicated Olivet Discourse. The end times and everything is not cut and clear, it's not easy, but we're gonna get through it anyways. And again, thank you, Ronan, for giving me that. I'm actually very excited to read that, so that's gonna be great. Great context. Great to see at least. Great to get the perspective at least, for sure. Anyways. All right. With that, email me that, and then I will actually end it here, and then tomorrow we will finish chapter 24 at least, and we will continue the Olivet Discourse with that. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow then. Have a blessed rest of you guys' day.